Everybody, welcome to Command Modern Air and Naval Operations. This is the import file tutorial. Imports are probably one of the best features of our scenario editor. It basically allows players to save units and objects from one scenario and then import them into another. It's probably not a big deal in terms of 1 or 2 units, but when you look at an air base that could be hundreds of units large and take hours to complete, this feature basically makes the player go through that only once, and then they can import it again into any scenario with relatively few clicks. The good news is that we've also constructed or pre-constructed thousands of air bases and airports ports for players to use and import in, saving them the build time completely. So to start, we'll look at how to build an import file, and then we'll look how to import them into a scenario. All right, let's start by creating an import file. So let's add a couple of units. In this case, we'll add an Australian Perry-class frigate, and might as well add an Anzac along with it. Okay, first thing you want to do is select the units so that they're highlighted. Go to the editor drop-down, select Import, Export Units, save selected units groups to a file. The Export Units Groups to a File dialog will appear. There are a bunch of text fields. Please do fill out the name. So in this case, we'll call it AU Surface Action Group 2013. Valid from and until. These are not required, but we will. So we'll say 2012 until 2014. And then you can add a note, which is really useful when you share these files, and it's all displayed to the player when they look. And I'll show you that in a minute when we add it to a scenario. So we'll say only active in the Indian Ocean. Okay, when you hit save, you'll get the Windows Save As dialog. First thing to note is that all files are saved as extension.inst files. Second thing is that this is actually pointing at a directory in command. It's the import export folder. It must always be pointing at this to be able to see them in the dialog, which I'll show you in a minute. So in this particular case, it's an Australian group, so we'll add it to the Australia folder. You can create your own folders just as long as it's under import and exports. I did actually have a mic folder. So we'll go ahead and put Australia, and we'll give the file a name, AUSAG 2013, and we'll save it. So we'll go ahead and create another scenario. Like this one, we'll add side, AU. Okay, now to import them into a scenario, go to Editor, Import Export Units, Load Units from a file. Okay, when I open this up on the left is basically your file directory. Okay, so it is actually looking at that import and export folder under Command in Windows. And you can expand these to show what's inside of them. So in this case, we actually saved it on Australia. You can see all the folders there, and there's our AUSAG 2013. When we check it off on the right, you'll notice all the text that we added and then their unit list. And when you're ready to add them, you can hit Load Selected Installations. And then when you go back in, you can see your units are now added to the spot you actually had them in the original scenario. If they're carrying a helicopter, it'll also be there too. So you can actually save carriers with entire air groups, and it'll work. Just to kind of demonstrate the real value in this, that was only a couple units. Let's add all of Sri Lanka's air bases in one click. So we'll go to Import Export Units, Load Units Group from File, go down to Sri Lanka, select it, hit Load Selected Installations, and you'll now notice that every air base is added. Now, if you had to do that by hand, that would have taken you all day. So it was only a couple of clicks. So I hope the value of all this is pretty apparent. And the other neat thing is you can actually share these files with other players. The only warnings we have to give is be well aware of any database updates. It'll actually pull using the DB IDs. So it should work in most cases, but if there's any massive change, they may not work. The other thing to note that there's 2 different databases. So if it's a file that was created with the Cold War database, it will not work with the database 3000. It does give you a warning when you try to do that, though. So this is import files. I hope you find it useful. I hope you use it, and please share with each other. Thank you. Bye.